Alright, ladies and gentlemen, I'm live, the voice of reason coming at you. And this week, I'm going to talk about the Republican and Democratic nominees for vice president. I'm also going to come at you with my review of WWE Battleground, Raw, and SmackDown for this week. The other thing I'm going to talk about is a funny story, and we're going to talk about that right now. On the way to Rio de Janeiro, which you would consider to be a peaceful destination for great enjoyment, and swimming, and vacationing, and just greatness, right? Well, unfortunately for the Olympic Flame, it had no vacation in Rio de Janeiro. Or I guess if you want to call it a vacation, it took a very long vacation in Rio de Janeiro. It got extinguished for the first time in a extremely long time on the way to its Olympic destination. This is news because in Rio de Janeiro, they really don't want the Olympics. They don't want them because it's going to cost that place a lot of money. It's going to be something that disrupts their way of life, and it's going to bring more tourists to a tourist destination to begin with. They don't want it. Uh, the athletes don't want to be there because of the Zika virus and the fear of getting it. Now, it's my understanding that the Zika virus is normally sexually transmitted. However, mosquitoes can have it as well. I don't know. I don't know what to think about this. I feel like the Olympic flame going out right before the games start is a bad omen, and it's something that most times in the Olympics will spell doom for the event. But in this scenario, I feel like they're going to try even harder to make sure that it's a success. But we'll see as it gets going. Now, we're going to talk about Raw, SmackDown, and the latest WWE pay per view, Battleground. Battleground kicked off our week in the WWE. A lot of great matches. We're going to start off with the Usos versus Breezango, which is a tag team mixed of Tyler Breeze and Fandango, as he's called in WWE. This was a pretty good match. It was the kickoff show match. It was okay. It wasn't anything spectacular, but it wasn't anything horrible. I thought it was decent. As far as the next match we're gonna cover, it was the women's match with Sasha Banks's mysterious partner versus uh, Charlotte and Dana Brooks. Sasha Banks' mysterious partner turned out to be Bayley, which, if you're familiar with the internet wrestling community, everyone already knew. It was a pretty good match. The crowd popped for Bayley pretty good. I mean, nothing remarkable happened during the match except I will give a nod to Bayley for a ring apron backflip onto Dana Brooks and Charlotte. It was pretty good. Sasha Banks got a little aerial action going. It was a pretty good match, and Sasha Banks looking good as ever. Um, yeah, that's it for that match. We're now gonna go on to Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens. That match was amazing. It may be match of the summer, unless SummerSlam happens to be outstanding. Those two, if you are anywhere near familiar with the WWE, you know that those two have the best matches, period, in WWE right now. They're the best going as far as a duo of people in the ring. Kevin Owens has mic skills. We're still waiting to see if Sami Zayn can put those together. But those are two up and coming superstars, in my opinion, for WWE. I'd like to see more from them going forward, but they put on the match of the night. Um, the next match was the Wyatts and the New Day with Kofi Kingston, Xavier Woods, and Big E Langston forming the New Day. They're the zany bunch. They're kind of the comic relief that come in. They had a pretty good match with the Wyatts. It was kind of weird to see Xavier Woods be afraid of Bray Wyatt. Uh, that is until you see Bray Wyatt do his little spider walk thing. That's pretty freaking funny. And I'd be afraid of that too if I saw somebody doing that in the middle of the street. I'm sorry. That's just wild. The Wyatts won the match. It was pretty good. It was also probably, and I put this in quotations, probably the last time you're going to see the Wyatts all together because of the brand extension. The next match was the Intercontinental title match. It was decent, if yet short. I mean, the Intercontinental title should be a longer match, but it wasn't. And, The Miz retained. Uh, Maurice helped him. Bob Backlund was involved. There was a little shoving match between The Miz and Bob Backlund. And, I mean, it was just a wild match. It wasn't anything, great, but it was, I don't know, it was zany. It was pretty much like a Miz match. It was zany, it was funny, that sort of deal. The next match we're going to be covering is the last match on the card. It was the title match to see which brand would get to hold the title going into SummerSlam and probably keeping the title for the foreseeable future. It was the members of the Shield going at it against each other. It was Dean Ambrose, Seth Rollins, and Roman Reigns coming off of his wellness policy suspension, which we all know in WWE language means performance enhancing drugs suspension. Reigns looked good, no ring rust. He had a pretty good match. Rollins and Ambrose surprisingly worked together to get him out of the way for most of the match. Um, Dean Ambrose and Seth Rollins also looked strong. All three guys in the match had their moments where they looked like beasts, and to me, that's what should have happened in that match. Ultimately, Dean Ambrose won the match, and he kept the title on SmackDown for the foreseeable future. That's the end of WWE Battleground altogether. I thought it was a pretty good event. I didn't think it was spectacular, but it was pretty good. It was you know, I'd give it a 7 out of 10. To be honest, I thought it was above average, but not spectacular. Raw came next. The beginning of a new era was what it was sold as. It was. As you saw several call ups from NXT, you saw Finn Balor making his debut, and we'll talk about him a little bit later. The first thing that I want to cover about Raw, though, is the simple fact that we have a new women's champion. After a bit of a chase, after a bit of an injury scare, after a bit of WWE not knowing what to do with her, Sasha Banks beat Charlotte for the title on Raw, and she is your new women's champion. Much deserved. I feel like she's the best female wrestler going right now in WWE, that at least. And I think Charlotte's reign was getting kind of stale. They needed a new champion, and to make the build that this is a new era, I think that they did the right thing. I think that you know, like I say, Charlotte, she's stale. She doesn't have her father Ric Flair anymore to kind of speak for her. I feel her promos are very forced, so you don't get a lot of good action with her on the mic, but in the ring she's great. Sasha Banks, however, can do both, so I think she's the better of the two. She deserved the win. Now the fans have something to look forward to in that they're going to have a rematch with Charlotte and Sasha Banks coming into SummerSlam. It was also announced on Raw that Brock Lesnar, who will not be suspended by WWE or fined by WWE, considering that he just tested positive for PEDs in the world of the UFC, coming off of his fight against Mark Hunt, in which he won by unanimous decision, but he'll be back next week. Interestingly, we don't know if Paul Heyman will be with him, which is the guy who most people enjoy watching talk on Raw because he's pretty good on the mic. However, he's having a contract dispute with WWE, so it'll be interesting to see if they get that done before Monday. So the premise of Raw last week, though, was that there was going to be two matches to decide the two people who were going to face off in the main event, which will then face off against Seth Rollins to determine who will be the first Raw Universal Championship belt holder. Rollins got the bye because he's Raw's number one draft pick, and apparently they want to play up the fact that Stephanie McMahon loves this guy. Um, I thought the first match was good. It had Finn Balor, who ultimately came out to win. Uh, it was a good match. It wasn't anything spectacular. Uh, Again, same thing with the next match, which featured Roman Reigns winning. Nothing spectacular. All the guys in it had their little spots, but nothing spectacular. Roman Reigns versus Finn Balor was one of the better matches on Raw in a while. Finn Balor wound up winning that one, and he's going to face Seth Rollins at SummerSlam for the Universal belt. It was cool. It was a good thing. Um, I think Finn Balor is going to make something happen for the WWE that it hasn't had in a while, which is a fresh face in the main event scene. They tried to put AJ Styles in the main event, and he may be in the main event on SmackDown, but as far as Raw is concerned, he's going to be one of the guys that they're pushing that the WWE audience hasn't seen a lot of. If you're familiar with NXT, you know he was, I believe, the longest reigning NXT champion of all time. And, he did a great job in NXT. He put on some classic matches. His match that was previous to the Raw match that he had with Shinsuke Nakamura, who is currently on NXT, was great. It was one of the better matches I've ever seen out of those two for such a short time period that they had to do that match. So now we're going to move to SmackDown. SmackDown's premise was pretty much the same. Who's going to go to SummerSlam to face off against their champion, Dean Ambrose, for the belt? I'm not going to bore you with the particulars because I didn't find SmackDown to be that interesting. The particulars don't matter. The end result, Dolph Ziggler, who has been toiled in the sub card for what feels like forever since his championship reign years ago, finally gets a chance at the main event at SummerSlam, or one of the main events at SummerSlam, to challenge for the WWE Championship against Dean Ambrose. I think that them pushing Dolph Ziggler has a lot to do with the simple fact that Dolph Ziggler is going to be running out of contract soon. He's going to be potentially trying his hand at comedy, which I think is cool. You see these guys in different places, but I think Dolph wants to keep wrestling, and I think this giving him a shot at the belt if he wins, or even if he doesn't, if he's a strong main event caliber guy, is going to keep him more interested in wrestling than pursuing comedy. He had a few stints at the Laugh Factory and places like that not too long ago. So I think WWE might be worried that he's going to pursue other things. Um, that's going to wrap it up for my YouTube listeners. If you're interested in hearing more about what I have to say, because this podcast is going to go longer than this, please tune in to audio.com. Look for me, 86 Voice of Reason. There you're going to find the entire show. But as for the YouTube audience, I will say goodbye to you guys for now. And I'll see you guys next week with my new co-host who's going to be on here with me. My friend for probably 13 years. We're going to call him Dub on here. He's going to be joining me going forward on these podcasts. And we're going to hope that he's able to provide you with a unique take on things that maybe I'm not going to cover, or things, a different perspective on what I cover than what me alone could do. So YouTube, I'll see you guys next week. Audio.com listeners, we're going to keep this going now and talk some politics.